Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today is December 17th, 2025. We are nearing the end of the year, and I am putting out all the stops. I plan on being vacation, so I'm getting a lot of content up now, trying to get gear up for 2026 and what's happening, get my clients lined up, figure out what's going to go. And this is a perfect topic here. Hang on, I got something going on there. And so this is something going on because there's so much confusion out there, and it's easy to get really negative with all the news going on. And one of the things is what's actually happening. Well, when you talk to people on the ground, they're going to tell you something the media isn't reporting on. And this is a perfect example of the kind of topics we like to cover that go beyond the headlines and really where you should be, what's going on. So this is something going on here. And I actually wasn't quite aware of this until my recent conversation with our special guest today, which I'll get to in a second. Did you miss this? This is a huge thing going on. There's a huge rush of foreign owners and investors into the U.S. market. It's a fascinating thing. And with me today is Stephen Zarubaiko, global business attorney based in Massachusetts, telling us about what is actually happening right now. And I think really, who should be listening right now? Hey, look, if you're someone you own a business in the U.S., you might want to know this because there could be a potential purchaser for you. If you're a professional involved, with anything in finance or anything like this is a new reality, especially for people like us in tax. Hey, look, a lot more international owners, new issues arise, and anyone in business, whether you're a realtor, and I think a lot of our people, and whether you're a staffing agency, this seems like it's a big thing. So, Stephen, take it away here. What is going on here? And thanks for joining us this morning. So, what is exactly happening on this unreported story?
Thank you, Anthony. So, one of the things that people are not really aware of, they're following U.S. news broadcasts talking about, oh my God, XYZ, the world is blowing up, and not really understanding kind of the big picture of what is really happening. So the world right now is changing, which there's all sorts of stuff which is chaotic, and you're getting all sorts of news broadcasts saying, oh, this is happening, that's happening, the other thing's happening, and they're kind of missing the big picture. So basically, the way that things have been operating, going back to functionally end of World War II, we've had a particular type of trading system that has been operating out there. So going back to basically 1947, you have had American companies going out and doing business and going outbound. They've been setting up operations internationally. Relatively few companies going in there and saying, yes, let's go through and set up operations in the U.S. Because the system incentivized setting up stuff outside the U.S. on a bunch of different levels. Costs were lower. We basically had the ability to ship stuff. Well, circumstances have changed. COVID disrupted a bunch of stuff. It made the issues of supply chains a really big issue. So we went from a situation where companies were making decisions based off, where can I find this thing the cheapest, to holy moly, how do I find this? We're now dealing with unobtainium, right?
Yeah, that's a huge, thank you for that, Stephen. That is a huge change. That's the just-in-time inventory. Look, when I was in one of business school, everything was that, hey man, just-in-time inventory, man, that's the thing. That's going to be that's the future. And then everyone burned by just-in-time inventory. Or if you're going to do just-in-time, make sure you can get it just-in-time. I think is something that's going on there. So it's a value that never was there is now a new value. Yeah.
Well, so what has ended up happening, and you've seen decisions being made by big companies that have had to now reevaluate how they are doing what they are doing. So most of the media coverage that you get right now is focused on, particular stories of, oh, it's tariffs or it's this, that, and the other. And yes, those things are there. And yes, those things are driving certain factors, but they're actually, the issues are bigger than they basically then are being covered. Okay. So in the U.S., we tend to do a lot of navel gazing. The stories are all based off of, oh, ... So and so opened a plant here or closed a plant there or this, that, or the other. You actually have to back things up and look at what's happening globally to understand the big picture of what is moving. So, global picture right now is that there's instability in a lot of places. In fact, pretty much everywhere. Why? Because the model that has been operating is shifting. It's changing. Supply chains are moving. So the model that you saw for the last, let's say, 40 years, which was, hey, China's the world's manufacturing floor, that story is not the same now. It started to shift even before COVID. COVID accelerated it. During the first Trump administration, it started to move. Under Biden, it was moving. And under Trump again, it's moving even more. So you're seeing companies that had operations in China are moving to other markets. If you talk to manufacturers that are dealing with certain types of products, they're looking at places like Vietnam or Indonesia or Thailand, Malaysia, outside the U.S. for certain types of products. And then there are other companies that are looking at, hey, how do we bring this stuff back into the U.S.? How do we get this stuff close or closer for various different reasons? If you look at really big companies, there are some of these very large tier one companies that are making very large investments into the U.S. So whether that's,
Steve,
yeah.
Steve, I just wanted to ask a question because maybe, we all get a little negative here. Is the United States of America still the world's #1 economy?
Yes.
It still is. Okay. So, because it's all crazy, but it's still the #1 economy is still going on. So I think oftentimes, when we're reading the news, we forget about that. And I think one thing we forget about is as bad as things are here.
Yeah. My running joke to people is that the United States, in a lot of ways, can be that one-eyed, one-legged man in a round room full of blind quadriplegics and a butt-kicking contest. No matter how circumstances are here, there are a lot of things outside of here that are different or worse and are missing. And companies are basically sitting there and saying, okay, how are we de-risking what we are doing, right? How are we making sure that the products that we need are here? So if I have a production plant at 123 Main Street and I'm buying widgets from company X, that I need for my production line, to keep things operating. And you saw this during COVID. You had, big auto manufacturers had lots full of vehicles that they couldn't deliver because they didn't have
the chips. Yeah.
Yes. And those issues, that part of the process is there. So people are kind of misunderstanding what is really happening here.
Yeah.
Again, you have these big companies, they're making substantial commitments. You're talking about tens of billions of dollars to open plants doing whatever, and it's in different industries. So they're basically going through and saying, okay, for my supply chain, yes, cost matters, but I have to make sure that this thing that I'm buying is actually going to get here, which starts changing the dynamics from, okay, I'm buying my widget and it is cheap because the cost of labor in location X is, basically slave wage labor. Is that still out there? Sure. I'm not saying that, kind of your cheap textile is necessarily going to be coming back into the U.S.
Yeah, because there's textile is like, hey, look, that can sit around. That's not something that expires quickly. That's something that can be there, and you have lead time. You have enough. Hey, we need this here, so I could see that. The cheaper textiles not coming here. But and I'm just sort of thinking as you were describing the United States, we get really negative in the United States of America, and your quotes reminded you actually don't need to outrun the bear. You just need to be faster, slightly faster. And it's like, let's not think. I'm trying to think. It's like, let's not think of what the United States is, but what it's not.
So understand.
That's sort of what.
U.S. is basically roughly 20 to 25% of the global GDP, depending on whose numbers you're looking at.
Okay.
So, I mean, you go through and you kind of do the list of countries and regions, and the United States is a huge chunk. The EU is another huge area. People forget the size of the EU. That's, 28 countries, 450 million people that are there. The interesting thing is that the EU is having its own problems, a lot of them self-inflicted. So, for example, cost of energy in Europe is
I just want to talk about that right there, my friend, right there, number one, right there. Yeah.
It's a significant issue. So, and people don't think about how that impacts various different things. So, one of the big issues that is hitting in Europe right now, their chemicals industry is in crisis because it relies on inputs of, basically natural gas. I mean, that's literally what is used for making petrochemicals. Well, cost in the U.S. versus Europe, depending on the day and time, the difference can be, 4 to 7 times more expensive in Europe in certain places.
Yeah.
So if you go in, you can go back, look. Probably about a month and a half ago, there were articles coming out of both UK and the EU that their chemical companies are sitting there saying, "Hey guys, you got to change this. We can't do this. We can't compete. We're getting slaughtered by Chinese dumping stuff, so product on the inbound side. And then how are we getting the base load stuff?" So that factor in and of itself is causing certain companies to move. You've got companies that are sitting there and saying, "Hey, listen, we're setting up facilities in, let's say, Texas or Louisiana because proximity to huge natural gas stuff." So kind of big picture trend, what is happening? You have some very large, companies, various different industries. So it can be steel, it can be pharmaceuticals, it can be, chips or some of these other things that are making decisions to open large facilities for reasons that are not necessarily being driven by what people think it's being driven by. People are sitting there saying, "Oh, it's just Trump tariffs, and if those go away, then all this stuff changes." No.
That's kind of where I want to talk about. So, because it's not necessarily really, and this trend started before the One Big Beautiful Bill was passed, right?
Yes.
And this trend started before the tariffs really kicked in.
Yep.
So the tariffs in that are not relevant to this trend going on. And I think for me in Connecticut is that I'm looking at my gas pump. I'm like, oh, okay, gas is slightly down, and I'm like, what? And I'm like this. I'm like, big deal, right? What I'm not seeing is that what it could be. Like we thought we had high gas before. Well, look, where you're really crippled by that. And I think it's an obvious story we're missing, but I'm just imagining myself, as an owner of a European company reliant on energy, and every day looking at energy prices, just like, oh God, this is killing me. Oh my God, this is killing me every day. Knowing your competitor who opened a branch in the U.S. is not suffering the same thing that you are. That seems to be a big, and that's every day it's happening. Every day, you're looking, oh God, how long can we go on for when everyone else is not paying that? So that seems like a huge, again, that's not going to be every industry, but ones that are reliant on. I think so. I think one thing, and I want to ask this next is like, you and I are, we're in the New England, right? Not a lot of things happen here, except smart people like you and I get around and talk, and we make deals. We do this and that. And other than that, we don't have a lot of other large industries. So, and I guess this is the thing too, is when I look out my door, I'm like, well, where are these I don't see these foreigners buying. Like there's so. Oh, actually, no. I gotta change that. In my town, our industrial park, we have a lot of foreign-owned businesses coming in. I mean, they do some very high-value stuff coming in. So we're starting to see that coming in our town. Well, I forget, we have lower electricity here, by the way. That's why.
Yeah.
We're publicly owned utility, so we have a little special leg up over other towns. But yeah, that's there. But so where really is the investment going though? These, let's put it this way: if you're a U.S. owner if you own a U.S. company and you're thinking, I might find a seller, what industries would be most excited about this trend?
So let me kind of give you the kind of bigger picture. Let's talk about, you've got those big, tier one companies that are opening, so it's Hyundai opening a steel mill in whatever, Louisiana, right? They're turning to their supply chain and they're saying, hey, listen, we're opening, this plant, at this particular location. It's going to be online in whatever that time period is, a year, 2 years, we're going to be operating. If you want to basically continue supplying to us, we need you to figure out how the heck you're going to be able to supply us effectively from the lower 48, for the most part. Don't want to say you can't do stuff in Alaska or in Hawaii, but realistically, that's not where this stuff is really going to be coming from. So they're turning to their tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers and saying, hey, listen, Bob, Fred, whatever your name is, you're making these widgets for us. This is what we're looking for. We've been playing with you with our plant in Korea or wherever that is. We're doing this in the U.S. We've got a substantial commitment. We're going to be doing this for a very long period of time, right? You don't invest tens of billions of dollars to pull up stakes. And the reality is that, again, the U.S. is a very large market. We are a large consumer market. So they're turning to their suppliers in whatever industry it is and saying, okay, in order for you to play with us, this is what we want. So you've got, at this point in time, companies from different parts of the world, some of whom would never have been considering this, how am I going to play inside the U.S. or supplying inside the U.S. from inside the U.S., now trying to figure that out, which means they've got kind of 3 ways they can do that. Way number 1, they can try and do something greenfield. So they're going to go through and, okay, I'm going to throw up a new plant, staff it up, the whole 9 yards. That's not, is that going to happen? Sure, for certain things. If a company is big enough and has the capital enough to be able to do that, great. But there's 2 other things that they're doing, and it's happening now. You don't hear it in terms of general conversations on the news. But if you're talking to business brokers and investment bankers, they're getting phone calls from places they didn't used to get phone calls from. So what are these people, what are these companies looking for? They're looking for kind of the equivalent U.S. company that is manufacturing widgets. So pick whatever industry you are in. There are companies that are sitting outside the U.S. and they're looking for one of 2 angles. One angle is they're saying, okay, I want to find a company that manufactures widgets in the U.S. and that has extra capacity. So they're operating at, let's say, 75, 80, maybe even 85% capacity. They've got extra capacity. I want to go through and I want to basically buy that capacity, do a JV with them.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Okay. So yeah. I can't afford to necessarily, because of the size of my particular company, I can't make the commitment of kind of doing the full jump, right? But if you have an operating company and you're making widgets, and you have extra capacity, you now have, and this is for probably the first time in maybe 50 years that you're seeing this, people coming in and saying, hey, I really want you, I want to buy that extra capacity from you.
Right, I'm trying to think of a time where, like, hey, you overbuilt your factory capacity. What a great thing. That's not usually the story.
So that's one piece of it. The other piece is that they're sitting there and they're looking at the exact same company, but saying, okay, I don't want to do a JV. I want to buy you. So you now have a new pool of buyers that otherwise would not necessarily be looking at your company. So, because again, they're looking at it from their perspective is, hey, listen, I've got, this is an existing company. It's got the people in it. It's already making widgets. We could keep making the same widgets that they're making, integrate our stuff into it. We don't have to try and figure out how to do all of these various different things, which, as you and I both know, there's a lot of compliance stuff that's out there, right? In terms of running a business, staffing, human resources, all of that type of stuff. Much easier for them to kind of go through and buy that.
Yeah.
It's already,
I think, but buying a fully functioning, human resources department is a nice thing when it's all in compliance, because and every state has its own little thing and it's all localized to the thing. So many things. So hey, look, we know this worked. Why? Because it's been working for 20 years.
Again, you have the systems are there, and again, this is something that American businesses tend not to think about, because the assumption here is, well, everything operates out there the way it operates here, which is not true. In very dramatic different ways. So outside the U.S., employment at will in certain parts of the world is illegal. The system does not actually operate that way. So your ability to hire and fire in other parts of the world is very, very, very different.
Yeah. Oh my God, my poor cousin in Germany. He builds very advanced pressure gauges. Oh boy. Yeah, and I've been talking to him for years. So I think he's probably, because he's been talking like, oh, I really should create a U.S. presence. I think I should send an email to him to say this might be the time. So you said there's kind of three things going on. Number one is just starting brand new, hey, we're going to just start from brand new, a joint venture, or just, hey, look, we're going to buy out the existing company. Anything else going on?
So there's there are places that have been kind of barren wastelands as far as economic development stuff for probably 30 or 40 years, where things just hollowed out. Some of those places are the places that are going to be getting the inflows coming back in, and in ways that people probably didn't think about. So most people have forgotten that Puerto Rico exists.
Yes.
So prior to 1996, there were all sorts of fun and interesting tax incentives that were there that changed in 96, that took those incentives away for certain things, which hit Puerto Rico, manufacturing hard. And then you combine that with China going into the WTO, and the giant sucking sound of stuff coming out of Puerto Rico was amazing. Well, that actually may be a place that certain things are going to be landing, because again, people forget Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, so there are no tariffs.
Oh my God! Well, this is actually, and this is, Steve, what you're saying is actually, it reminds me of a story I tell my audience all the time, that if you're calling the IRS and you press 2 for Spanish, the call gets routed to the Puerto Rico call center. Now, this is the thing, when you're talking about good jobs being sucked out of Puerto Rico, the reason why the bilingual agents at the IRS center in Puerto Rico are the best in the nation there is no other service center I want to talk to other than the people in Puerto Rico. Get the smartest, brightest, best speakers. The reason why is because there's no good jobs in Puerto Rico. The IRS is like the dream job if you're in Puerto Rico, because there's just nothing there. So that's huge news. And this is, I haven't been, they did create the new tax incentives for certain people in Puerto Rico. I have never really been a huge fan of them, just because it's so limiting on things. It never really fits out. This actually could be much more. And now one thing that I'm sort of going on, and we're going to be discussing this, I think, tomorrow, we're going to be discussing this on the channel, is that Trump is sending in and this could be related, and it could certainly help out a few people, that Trump is going to put through his golden visa. I thought it was just some BS and just some nothing there, but he actually put the changes into the regulations. It's going through the notice and comment. I think it's going to come out. And now you could see, well, that actually would be really helpful. Why? Because, well, the guy who needs to create the plant in the U.S. might actually want to be here. That actually might want to be here. So he's like, oh yeah, you know what? And so I think that could help facilitate. Not that they couldn't get here earlier, but I think just making it much more clearly and getting rid of that. And one thing I don't really, all those EB-5 programs. There's so much investment fraud all over. I just look at it as like, you know what? This is just a cleaner way to do it. Give the money. Don't worry about creating the phony business. Create the real business. Create the one you want to do, not the one for the visa program. That's kind of where I'm at. Do the one that makes sense.
On the immigration side, obviously, we're in a period of certain amount of complexity, right? So there are certain things that, right now I'm consciously not talking about because I know that I don't know. So things have not solidified.
Okay.
But when you're sitting out there and you're looking at, doing X, Y, or Z, it's a game of planning and execution, right? The interesting thing, people are sitting there saying, oh, these immigration things, it's creating these problems. It's actually creating another set of opportunities. So think about it this way. If you have a certain skill set, you're here in the U.S., you are a U.S. citizen, you're a legal permanent resident of the U.S., and you've got specialized knowledge. Now, you've got companies that are coming in and are trying to set up new operations. They have to fill those operational positions somehow. And they're probably not going to be necessarily doing it in the way that they might have done it, let's say 10 years ago. So instead of trying to go through and do L1 intercompany transferees, and doing that with a large volume, they're going to be looking and saying, okay, I want to minimize the amount of that immigration touch point that I'm going to be having, right?
Right.
So there's actually a whole nother set of opportunities for people and companies that are servicing those businesses. The consultants, your fractional folks, your fractional CFO, COO, CTO, CIO, all of those people. People that have engineering backgrounds that are able to do ... Understand, there's also another thing that people are missing on this, which is technology has moved. So things that used to take a facility of 1,000 people, 5,000 people to do may not require that same thing because you're now doing stuff with different technology, 3D printing, additive manufacturing, CMC, blah, 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 right? So the people that have those skills and those backgrounds and are in that universe now also have a whole nother set of potential opportunities, customers, clients, the people that are able
so it's like likewise. It's sort of, to kind of the same things. Like, well, U.S. market includes U.S. capital, but also U.S. people.
Yep.
And so that it's the same thing and I see your point too. It's like, well, look, we need you to be in the U.S. because we can't wait for you to get here. We can't wait for your thing. We're not going to send you back to live 60 days there and move around. We just want someone here full time.
So
living here.
And the thing is that, again, you have to kind of think about this from so the things that are being driven by actual underlying business economics. So if somebody's coming in and, opening a new plant or acquiring a plant and they need something, they may not necessarily be looking for a full-time solution. They may be looking for somebody that is a fractional or has a business that is a fractional, or that may be able to go through and provide a contracted solution. So again, if you are a business owner and you have a business and you make my old running joke, left-handed Lebanese tennis rackets, right? And this company, for their process, they need the left-handed Lebanese tennis racket. Well, your ability to kind of plug into that new environment, those are opportunities that are there. So this is the stuff that's happening. It's not being covered wise.
You're like giving Christmas hope to me here, and just so you know, as an American, I mean, it's sort of costing countries around the world. Now, I and we look, and I look at many of the reasons I look at the EU, they don't represent their people. I mean, they pass laws constantly against it. We're covering the FATCA story going on right now. There's it's on pause. It's going to Court of Justice. Constantly, the European Union, the leaders of the European Union can never act in the benefit of the people they claim to represent. That's just something you see constantly happening no matter where. The question I have, is there any, and it's sort of like this, it's like, so I want to just go around the course like, okay, the U.S. is doing things wrong. We know that, right? Hey, there's things not going wrong, but we don't have to be the most right. We just have to be less wrong than anyone else. So we didn't talk about anything in China yet. China, are they Southeast Asia? Anything they're doing wrong? Japan, anything they're doing wrong? Is there something that's driving? Is there any increase from Asian companies' interest in the U.S. As well?
Yes, but it tends to be based on certain sectors. So they're basically, depending on where you are looking, right? So China is its own cuckoo story. I can spend hours talking about what's going on in China. Right now, there are, from a U.S. side of things, companies, look, 2 weeks ago, Tesla and GM turned to their suppliers of parts and said, we will not be sourcing parts for U.S. production from China. Flat out. That was, go in, you can go look back, beginning of December, CNBC, Bloomberg, whatever. You will find the stories that, again, GM and Tesla, both. It was end of, literally, right after Thanksgiving. So companies are pulling their supply chains out of China. Where are they going? Well, you're seeing companies that are attempting to shift to other places. So whether that's Vietnam, which has been the big beneficiary to this point, but also Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, trying to keep playing in that part of the world. A lot of that stuff is cost-sensitive stuff.
So you really can't increase your labor costs in the U.S. You're still going to have to do a low cost, but you're just trying to avoid the made in China labor.
Yeah. So again, the tariff game impacts this. This is why I'm saying there's going to be angles in Puerto Rico that are going to work, because the labor cost differential between mainland U.S. and Puerto Rico is there, combined with some of the stuff that doesn't necessarily require the same amount of bodies, right? So even in China, the processes have been moving away from a line of people pushing pins into stuff to automation of those processes. So that's becoming less of an issue on a bunch of different things. So it becomes basically an engineering issue, right? How are you engineering your production in order to do ... I mean, there are things I've heard about, and I can't confirm, but there are certain facilities here in the U.S. that are basically dark facilities that are doing stuff in the textile space that's highly automated. Now, is that necessarily doing cheap? No. But, costs tend to move in certain directions. So if you're looking at stuff and saying, okay, I need lower labor cost versus mainland U.S., again, Puerto Rico, that's an angle, an option, and there's no tariff stuff there. So there's going to be certain things that are going to go there. Puerto Rico has a problem, which is they've got a messed up utility situation.
Yeah.
So that is something.
But when we talk about, I'm not sure what the energy costs in Puerto Rico. I don't think they're super low though. I think that's one issue.
Well, no, and again, that is one of their issues, and it's one that needs to be dealt with. But the funny thing is when there's money at play, you'll be amazed how fast people will move to fix stuff. There just hasn't been the demand, right, from big manufacturers for stuff in Puerto Rico for the last 30 years.
No, there's been a lot going on there.
So,
let me see. I just want to make sure we covered everything I wanted to. I want to get a little bit of your background and how you got into this. It's just, I'm really Stephen, I really enjoy this. You're really creating a lot of, I think, optimism for us, at least, if not optimism, at least reality, so we can see, okay, this is where the opportunities may be. That this is where things will be moving. And these are long-term things that I don't think are gonna, I don't see how Europe is going to, fix its political problem overnight. I don't see how it's going to fix its energy problem overnight. It actually seems like it's doing everything to make it worse.
Yeah,
that's actually what it looks like.
There are things that the European Union has done. So the EU has come out with a regulation on AI, and that's for those of you that have heard of the GDPR stuff and the pain that created just in terms of websites. They're doing the same stuff that's going to create the same set of problems, which disincentivizes kind of the location of, data center. They're trying to. You have bureaucrats trying to. Drive
this
stuff.
Is scaring me. Yeah, no, I think that's your run out of Europe if you can, because basically and this is sort of the thing that we've covered the GDPR issues well. Our friend Fabian Laher is responsible for getting it in Belgium to do that, and this is the thing that I kind of mentioned on GDPR. That FATCA is a massive data collection system, for any U.S. person suspected of being a U.S. person. You don't have to be one; you're suspected. And you have this massive data sweep, and here it is. Hey, GDPR, can you help us protect us from this foreign country that wants our information? And this foreign country has a database that we know isn't secure, like the OPMM database that was hacked in 2016. Hey, GDPR, can you go something and help us? Well, maybe that's what we have. There might be some help down the road that GDPR might block you from here. So my point is, if GDPR can't protect you from the United States of America, then it's actually not worth anything. And likewise, when I hear that Europe is creating AI regulations, my guess it's only going to harm us, do no help. And that seems because everything that the EU does is firmly directly against the will of the people of Europe. So that scares me. So I didn't know that. I might have to cover that a little bit more too. I got to look into that one.
You have to look at and think about is, so all of this AI stuff requires data centers. Data centers require energy. That's simple. So if you're having issues with energy, costs of energy are high. Your ability to do data centers is limited. I mean, you're having these issues. You're seeing these issues here in the U.S. because you're having places where they're building data centers, but they don't have the energy available, right, in certain places. So you literally have data centers that have been built in California that cannot start to operate because they're basically the energy and the water and the cooling stuff is not there for them to actually be able to operate. Well, in Europe, you've got a different set of issues, which is they've been making this push to attempt to go through and do, it's wind and solar and great, fine, wonderful, wonderful, marvelous. The problem is that you're having capacity issues associated with that. Now, you go through and say, I'm going to put a data center, and that data center basically is running on the power equivalent to a small city. How do you do that?
It's not going to happen. So,
those issues are there.
So see, if Europe is kneecapped as it is, and like in Europe is, energy prices are kneecapping it everywhere, and AI development is going to be another huge problem there. I see. Not that not that we have it all solved here in the U.S., but again, all we have to do is be slightly better than what's going on in Europe.
Right now, you have. So if you're having conversations, almost everybody's talking AI. Not that they necessarily know what AI is or what it's going to do or not do. So in one sense, there's a certain amount of this that is similar to dot-com mania circa late 1990s. So we're going to have our pets.com scenarios where you're going to have stuff that's going to be a multi-bazillion dollar valuation on a company that has no revenues, never will have revenues, and will end up going pop.
Why not, right?
Are out there. And that's reality is we go through that with a certain amount of frequency because it's always the next flavor of the month. The amount of people that you will bump into right now that are talking about data centers, whether it's big data centers, small data centers, micro data centers, they're producing this, that, and the other. I've had probably in the last 3 months, I probably had 12 of those conversations that are, people that are seriously trying to chase after that. A lot of that stuff is going to turn ugly. Not all of it.
Yeah, here's a comment here, and I'm actually I got to read. I was trying. One of my friends was trying to sell a power plant in North Carolina for years. There's a coal-fired power plant, and it just is. It's still there. It's still sitting there. And I was just wondering. I'm like, will he finally be able to sell his coal plant? And I think it's just. And I think the problem you have is no one really wants to build coal. No one really wants to do this here. But that's sort of that's really the part. And a lot of the deals that I've seen are building the power plant necessary for the thing. But that's more of a function like, hey, look, that's sort of like, man, if there's a magic wand, what's that magic wand that lets you build a power plant? Who do you have to bribe exactly is more or less the thing. I think that's the big limiter. It's not exactly like that. I don't know if it's exactly like everyone is wanting to look good is what I always think.
So the issue with that particular segment, the power plant or the energy industry stuff, if you look at what's happened over the last 6 years, during the Biden administration, they forced a lot of power plants out. So a lot of the coal-fired plants, natural gas plants, they basically went to the companies and said, "Thou shalt shut this thing down." And, so there are facilities that are there that are now, effectively offline that may be able to be brought back online. And those issues are there. But remember, that's here in the U.S. That's not overseas.
Right. Yeah. No, and that's a great point. That's all of this untapped resources is here. It was here, shut down, or not installed. The plant that I'm talking about is on the PD.
So you have plants, and I know of a number of them because of one of the things that I'm working on, where you had. So we went through a deregulation thing here in the U.S. back 10, 15 years ago. So they disconnected the power generation piece from the transmission piece to the actual consumer piece in most states. Yeah. So what ended up happening is the utilities were no longer actually operating the power plants. Those were sold to other companies, which were now operating those things. And they basically went through, and those companies, so they're dealing with the energy regulators, because you have to have a certain amount of capacity. So when it's a hot day, cold day, energy spikes, all this other stuff. So you have some of these plants that basically were sitting there as standby, right? That would operate relatively few days a year. They may operate only 10, 12, 20 days a year during certain peak things, and otherwise we're just maintained and on standby.
Mm.
But
I think the point, that this is I think what I would say is if I own a European company, I would say, well, look, European energy prices are only going to rise because there's absolutely nothing that could come online to add additional to meet the additional demand. In the U.S., there's a lot of things that could come online.
So
with the political will was there.
The stuff in Europe is what it is. So they're doing what they are doing. So they had to shift their supply of natural gas from Russia. So they're importing it from Algeria or from Qatar or from us.
Right. Yeah. I think we were a big beneficiary on that. That's weird.
So they're getting, and again, they're getting it from Norway. They're getting it from the North Sea to the degree that they can. That's being pumped into their pipelines and grids, and that's what's keeping things going. But again, at a high price point. And again, the thing you have to understand is, okay, you can go through, you can theoretically build a power plant. Great. At what price point? Does it make economic sense or not? I'm not saying it will or it won't. There's some scenarios where it absolutely will. You look, again, if you go look within the last year, you've had deals done to restart mothballed nuclear power plants. Up in Michigan, they literally brought a nuclear power plant or bringing a nuclear power plant back online because to supply energy to data centers run by whatever, Microsoft or whoever.
And that's what we're seeing. Yeah. So we're getting close to time. I have a podcast in a little bit. I write at 10. We're going to be covering. Hang on, let me just share this with. We're going to be covering this. I got Michael on. We're going to be doing this in. Hang on, where is it? Here we go. We're going to be covering this in a little bit. Can you streamline just in a few minutes? Going to get to that. I want to finish this. I want to finish today with. Stephen, how did you get in this? And one of the things that cracks me up is there's not a big web presence for you, my friend.
There's a reason for that. I don't tend to. Basically, the people that want and need a lot of the stuff that I do are not looking that way. A lot of my work is coming through referrals and the network that I have built. So I basically am kind of unusual as an attorney because, again, I'm not just wearing an attorney hat. I actually do consulting and matching up companies and opportunities internationally. So I've done work in various different parts of the world with people that are doing very big things in different industries, which is different. So I get to wear the attorney hat where it's appropriate, and in other times when there's a higher value that I can fill on the consulting side, I'll do that and get a different law firm to wear that attorney hat. Simply because, you know what, everybody has their particular skills, and mine are developing certain relationships. So I get to talk to a lot of fun people.
Well, what I was told about Stephen is if you needed to know a guy, if you need the guy who knows a guy, he's a guy who knows a guy. Yep. So it's great, and I heard you are pretty much the most prolific networker around, and you essentially know everybody you kind of need in the international space.
I don't know everyone. I know a lot of people, and basically the thing that I've learned over time is it's not, you don't need to have the actual answer at that particular moment. You just need to know how to get to that answer and to network to that solution. So if somebody's trying to do some strange thing, and those are things I get. I mean, I've gotten the email, hey, we want to do a joint venture in Uganda on a cocoa plant, and the funding is coming out of Belgium, and the bank is in New York, and this, that, and the other, and we need ... I get those scenarios. So it's a bit. I live in a bit of an odd world, so.
Right on. All right. Well, now, and again, the only way to reach Stephen, here's his email right there. It's been in the banner the whole time. That's how you reach him if you are interested in. And Stephen, by the way, we have a huge audience today on this, so I really want to have you back again. And I think there's going to be some other topics we'd love to have you on. The audience loves you here. So you're really full of, of really great advice. And I think, having reality on the ground is always better than imagining what people are. And you're going to miss out on opportunities there. If you're going by the news and you're going by fear, you're going to miss out on opportunities. Thank you, Stephen, for sharing us the truth, showing us where things are, where things go and could be. And again, I'll be going on. And so you reach Stephen there. And also, I just want to, for those of you wondering what I do, I'm an international tax attorney. Been doing this for a while. We help global families pay less tax, avoid penalties, protect their assets without breaking law. I just got this website up. I did it myself. It took me forever. Stephen, you wouldn't believe how much time and money I wasted, and I ended up doing it myself. It actually is up now. I still have tweaks to do. If you want to, something here, you look at this. I even did this. I did this, Stephen. I'll get started right here. I'll probably make this a little bigger. And if you want, I did put my email right here if anyone. And by the way, and if you are an attorney yourself or a guest, someone in the same space as Stephen, you have a lot to say. I'd love to have you on as a guest. Really, our audience wants to know what's really going on around the world. And I can't thank you enough, Stephen, so much. So for that, if you have a big deal, an international deal going on, there's Stephen's contact information. I want to thank him so much and thank everyone for joining today. And if you are wondering about a streamlined disclosure, we'll be covering that in about 5 minutes live. I'm going to get another coffee. And for those of you joining there, I'll see you on that link. For now, this is Anthony Parent, Stephen Zarubaiko. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Anthony. Bye-bye, everyone.